So these men are going to be talking about their own experience, their lived experience, their read experience, and the experiential perspective of how the crisis of the pandemic that the world is navigating right now, how opportunities for wealth creation can be created out of this situation. And that is the reason for the Angels Memorial Estate Church Men's Ministry putting this forum together. The panelists have been handpicked. They have been selected based on their expertise in certain areas. There are several of them here with expertise across areas, but with experience in the private sector, experience in the public sector driving policy. And they all know what it is to create wealth for themselves, to create wealth for the companies that they're a part of, and of course for the individuals who were with or assisting these companies to achieve their goals. And so it is my pleasure to be sitting here and to be marshalling these proceedings, as I said. And good to have you on board as well. What is good is that there will be an opportunity for questions for you to pose if it is that in the discussion and the cut and thrust there is something that you didn't hear, or if there's something that was not illuminated, you have the chance to ask the questions of the panelists, and then they'll shed light on that. As a former parliamentarian of ours love to say, it's not a word he created, the word existed long before him, but he was the one who put it into the into the discourse. Senator, former parliamentarian Keith Desmond Knight used to love to say pellucid. And even if you didn't know what the word meant, I mean, the context was always strong enough for you to be clear and to nail the definition and to see what he intended by virtue of using that term. So yes, there will be an opportunity for the panelists to make pellucid for you things that weren't so clear from the cut and the thrust of the discussion. All right, I want to introduce the gentlemen of the panel today. Again, thank you to the organizers at Andrews Memorial for putting this together. We had two parliamentarians scheduled to speak with us. I know one is with us, and he was with us early. That's the leader of opposition business in the Senate, Peter Bunting, co-founder of Proven Management, and he is with us to share his vast experience in business in the private sector. And of course, you can't have Peter Bunting's contribution without some aspect of public policy and what governments should be doing to create facilitating environments, and how governments can now put things in place to make wealth creation a possibility for the smart entrepreneur, the entrepreneur willing to take risk. So you get all of that from his presence on the panel today. We are scheduled to have the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, Floyd Green. I didn't see him yet, but I'm sure he'll clock in. We have Elliott George Ramakhan, Elliott Kipchoge, the Kenyan distance running star. No relation, but they're esteemed men in their own right. He is in on this panel discussion as a cyber economist and a consultant, LG Ramakhan, and that will form the basis of what he will speak to us on. Alfred Thomas, Managing Director of Pioneer Manufacturing, Pioneer Manufacturing, who have some very strong products on the market, some products that are household names. We're going to talk to him about how they have managed to continue to shift strong units in this very challenging business environment. We have Paul Elliott from Banking, Deputy CEO of VMBS, and he'll be sharing with us the banker's perspective, no doubt, on what is happening, and of course, how capital can be accessed and what it is that you would be wise to do with your money in these difficult times. How this will work, the panelists will be asked to give an opening statement on the topic, and then we can get into the discussion where, of course, I'm like the chairman of the proceedings, so the revolution of who speaks will happen with me at the hub, and the gentlemen, of course, are used to this kind of setting, so I expect that the conformity will be strong to the rule. All right. In the order of how the gentlemen have been listed on the promotional material for the event, I'm going to start with the name listed first, and I mean it's as random as you can get. Well, it's not random, but it is as easy as you can go with. So there should be no trouble in the order. And again, everybody will have ample time to speak, so it's not an issue, I don't think. So, Mr. Bunting, may it please you to give your opening statement on the topic. I understand that you may take maybe 5 minutes. We want to keep it at best to 3 minutes, but if anybody has something to say that stretches on for 5 minutes, I won't cut you. So you can rest assured that you can go through your presentation without my interference. So Mr. Bunting, the floor is yours.
Thank you, George. Thank you. As asked to really speak a little bit about my journey as an entrepreneur and investor. And when you get as long in the tooth as I am, it's hard to bring that down to just a couple of minutes, but I'll try and go as quickly as I can. You know, like many, and good afternoon to my colleague panelists and listeners. Like many young persons growing up in Afro-Jamaican families, I understood a good future to come from getting a profession, becoming a lawyer, doctor, and engineer. However, while I was doing engineering, I interned at the bauxite alumina plant at Jamaica in House Hall. And I observed that, you know, here us engineers were out working in this hot, hostile industrial plant. We were typically the A students from high school. And in the air-conditioned offices were the C students, comfortable and earning as much or more than we were. And I said to myself, you know, there's something wrong with this picture. So as soon as I finished engineering, I went on to do an MBA and started transitioning to entrepreneurship and investment. I was lucky. I had my father's example. He started working at 19 as a bookkeeper on a dairy farm, earning only 9 shillings a week, riding a bicycle perhaps for the first 10 years of his working career. He eventually learned about dairying. He was a Kingston boy, interestingly, but he learned about dairying, bought his own modest dairy farm, then a larger one. And by his retirement, he owned a dairy farm of almost 400 acres with 600 cows. He had a stock portfolio and some income earning real estate properties. So I had an example in that sense. When I finished university, I started at Citibank. Like my father's approach, the primary goal of my first job was to learn, so to do an apprenticeship in the sector. I left Citibank after 2.5 years to start Manufacturers Merchant Bank. I was now a bit of a domain expert, but of course had no capital. I was just starting out in life. So my deal with the investors who had the capital was that if I hit certain performance targets as the managing director of the company, I would get sweat equity. After 3 years, I'd hit those targets, and I sold them my sweat equity, which at the time came up to about $230,000 US. I turned around and invested that in a company called Deering, Bunting and Golding. It was then quite an innovative startup. It was the first company to list on the Jamaica Stock Exchange before it even began operations. And that was really a type of guerrilla marketing strategy so that the company's name would be called every day in the stock market report, because we didn't have the money to promote advertising to establish the brand. I was the non-executive chairman of DBNG and went full-time into the public sector for 6 to 7 years. First as president of NIBJ, then as an MP and junior minister. I'd really always been interested in public service, and business was just a way to finance my participation in public service. I quickly realized, however, that I couldn't be an honest politician and provide for my family in the way I aspired to. So I came back into the private sector after just one term in politics in 97, 98, now as the chief executive of DBNG. Next 8 to 9 years was a period of phenomenal growth for DBNG, and we sold it to Scotiabank in 2006. That investment, by the way, when we started it in 92, we raised about $1.5 million. And when we sold it, what we returned to our shareholders was about $100 million US between dividends and the exit share price. At that point, I was 46 and essentially retired from working for a living. And if you subtract the 6 or 7 years I had already spent in the public sector, I could plausibly have retired by 40 after only about 15 years of work. And that demonstrates the potential for entrepreneurship in terms of investment. I went back into politics full time Nevertheless, learning from my first stint in politics, I made sure to have adequate and multiple streams of income as a backup this time around. So in addition to a portfolio of financial investments, we started another business called Proven Investments Limited. The original shareholders in this listed company have experienced an average US dollar return of 14% per annum, tax-free. I don't know how my time is going, George, but if I have a minute, I would just give one or two insights.
Yes, I'll give you a minute. I'll give you a minute more, no problem.
All right, so my main motivation to be an entrepreneur and investor was really to achieve the freedom that comes from financial independence. That's the first insight. The second was that the highest returns to an investor typically come from starting and running a business rather than from passively investing in assets, particularly for people. The third insight is that businesses that use lots of leverage, that is, that use other people's money, tend to create lots of wealth quickly for the owners. And if you look around the examples in Jamaica in terms of financial companies and real estate, you'll see that most of the persons who have become wealthy, first generation, non-traditional business families have made it through those routes. A few key concepts in terms of financial literacy, I think, is what many of what we don't teach our children in school or even as young adults. You know, the time value of money, postponing current consumption to increase the potential for future consumption, and to understand the risk-reward trade-off. And finally, I would say for now, I just say the best time to invest and to take risk is when you're young, because as Einstein is purported to have said, the greatest force in the universe is compound interest. And your investment compounded over a long period of time will give you a good return. And the other reason why it's good to take risk when you're young is that you typically don't have much to lose. So, and you have lots of time to recover from your mistakes. And let me close for now.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that opening statement, Senator Bunting. Minister Green, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you very much, George. Good to see my colleague, Sir Bunting. Looking well relaxed, I guess, you know. I will say it together that other members of the panel. Let me firstly just say I'm very happy that the Andrew Seventh-day Adventist Church and the men's ministry has pulled us together. I can't think of a better way to spend our Sunday afternoon, especially talking to men about these issues, issues in relation to wealth, in relation to how do you maneuver a time of crisis. I think Peter has already made my life a lot easier because I was asked to speak a little bit on education and on agriculture. And I guess because of my involvement with public service on both of them and my own personal journey. But I think Sir Bunting already made the agricultural argument for me because his father laid a great foundation being a dairy farmer. And I hope people pick that up because oftentimes when the story goes on, we forget the root and how it started. And I'll come back to that. But my own journey, and I'll definitely stick to the 3 to 5 minutes because I'm sure we'll have more time to expand. But my own journey more than anything else has been about how education can really allow you to achieve beyond your wildest expectations. So I did not come from a politically connected background. My mother is a teacher. My father went to the School of Agriculture and worked as an extension officer and then went abroad to work. I'm from rural Jamaica, a place called Junction, St. Elizabeth. And from very early, what we were taught is that the only thing that can really move you forward, that can really liberate you, that can move you from a state of poverty to a state of prosperity is education. And I think my own life has shown that. What I've been able to achieve and even to become member of parliament and now a minister of government, again, has been because I really prided education and took education seriously. And my educational journey was not an easy one, but my mother, again, as a teacher, always emphasized that the focus has to be on education. And I have seen throughout my time at the ministry and throughout my life that that is the greatest transformational force. So my first message, especially to the men, is that we have to put some pride in education and being educated. And it has gone way past being educated for you to have a degree or for you to have qualifications. But where education is now, and the real crux of education, is about the tools that it equips you with to do things like pivot in a time of crisis. One of the things that we have been doing at the Ministry of Education and Youth, and the time that I was there, is changing how we look at education to not just focus on the degrees that you would attain, on the qualifications that you would have behind your name, but more on the skills that you garner during your education journey, and a focus on what we call the 4 C's. Are our students at the end of the educational journey, are they creative? Are they able to critically think? Do they collaborate well? And how do they communicate? And for me, that is the heart of education, because regardless of what you want to do, regardless of what field of entrepreneurship you want to go in, your ability to critically think, to collaborate with others, and to be creative is critical. And as such, education will always be a very, very important part of the journey. And I left St. Elizabeth. I went to the University of the West Indies. I was on student loan for my university, my first 3 years at university. In fact, my journey is not a straight line. I wanted to get into law. That was not what I got into first. I did a degree in history and politics. And my experience in the student loan during those 3 years said to me that if I want to go any further, then I could not continue with the student loan. So I worked every step of the way while I was at university. I did everything from answering phones to working in the commissary to working at admissions, and used that to save resources so that when I got into law, I could pay my way through law. And I worked all my way in law here and in Barbados, again, saved, so that when I came back to Jamaica, I was in a much better state. But more importantly, what I find that education did for me is that it helped me in those critical core competencies. And it also helped me to build a network that helped me throughout life. And I'm sure we'll speak more about that when I speak a little bit about my political journey. So the critical thing for me is that education is not about the qualifications, but it's about the core skills that you garner. And a crisis is a great time for you to look to education, right? Again, one of the good things with this COVID-19 crisis is that all our systems have gone online. So how much of us are getting new skills? How much of us have signed on to new courses? How much of us are using the internet, which is at our fingertips, to ensure that we're continuing our educational journey? So education for me is the core of everything that I've been able to achieve. And now I've been put in a position to speak and to advocate on behalf of the agricultural space. And I think if we're serious in Jamaica about wealth creation, then the answer is agriculture. The answer is agriculture and fisheries, because again, if COVID-19 showed you nothing at all, it would have shown us that even in the height of a crisis, people have to eat. And one of the big questions was, where will our food come from? How will we feed ourselves? And people recognize now that a business-like approach to agriculture is a way to really liberate wealth. And again, George, if you were to look at it and look at the companies that have done well during the crisis, they're agri-based companies. There are companies like Grace that have done much more, but they started as an agricultural company and saw tremendous growth during this crisis, like Seprod, again, getting into new markets during this crisis, like JP Foods. So when we look at the potential of agriculture, I would say to my young men listening on that it's really time to think a lot more about farming and a lot less about flossing. And again, we will go into that in a fulsome way. And I do have some statistics about some of the crops that I believe are great now and how you can maximize on our fisheries industry. But I'll stop there as an opening, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Minister. So before we crack further on, I want to acknowledge the viewers on PBC Jamaica, also acknowledge the viewers on C News Online, and just to welcome everybody for being here and for participating in this forum. LG Ramakhan, cyber economist and consultant, it's your turn, sir.
Yes. Thank you, George, and welcome, viewers. And I am so happy to be a part of this esteemed panel. Welcome, gentlemen, and especially in the context where men are concerned in championing wealth creation, both from the perspective of being providers and being responsible for their families, and also by extension the nation. No doubt, I'm sure that we have a mixed audience, and the reach is very far. And I'm indeed humbled to be a part of this experience. My family comes from a very humble background. My mother, for most of her life, was a teacher, educator, and my father too, a businessman and educator. So two of the strongest experiences in my childhood was the farming of food, which later was focused on coffee farming, and also the farming of knowledge, which Honorable Floyd Green and also Senator Bunting spoke to. And through that experience of starting from humble beginnings, first through my parents, and watching how both their humility, empathy, and focus on developing others, it was a driving force in their own personal successes in various spheres of life, where they today have diplomats representing the nation on different fronts. And during my childhood, I would have connected those dots with a statement from Confucius, who says, if you're planning for a year, plant rice. If you're planning for a decade, plant trees. But if you're planning for a lifetime, educate people. And you too become educated. So the background of agriculture and the astuteness of education and where it can drive you was definitely a force in my life. And also my biblical education, understanding bits and nuggets of wisdom to really frame the horizons in my life. So this idea in rap music and so on, which was also a dominant part in growing up, listening, was a get rich or die trying. That did not appeal to me because I saw what that ended up in. So getting focused on wealth in a slow, deliberate, inclusive way was definitely a part of my focus. I would have been had the honor to be able to go to a number of different schools, both here in Jamaica and abroad. 6 high schools, 6 schools just for high school alone, in the US, in Florida, Baltimore, in Montego Bay City, and also in Kingston. And that experience also gave me a wide perspective to appreciate the different struggles of our society locally and globally. And that, we're all trying to achieve similar objectives to better ourselves, to better our families. And we may choose different paths, we may have different experiences and lessons, but none of that should be wasted, because our experiences should be able to help one another. And as a result of that, I translated the farming of food, farming of knowledge, to see how can we grow our economy so that on a broad-based level, everyone is at least a bit better off. And those who are at the lines of poverty have a chance to make a decent living in some way. And in this computer information age, which I was brought up in, the importance of data, understanding what is happening objectively, really resonated well with me. So I did a degree in computer science and also in economics, followed by an MBA and studies at Harvard in regulatory management and cybersecurity, which along that journey, I've been able to contribute at the Bank of Jamaica in a variety of ways beyond the traditional role of an economist. And now I have been given the privilege, honor to be seconded for a while at the Ministry of National Security, focusing on the National Cyber Program to really ensure that our cyber economy is secure, so that innovations and the intellectual property that we want to develop in our creative industries, services are protected and are able to grow in a sustainable way. And so that's what has driven me over the years. And on this topic of wealth creation, I just want to share just a few points and leave the rest for later question answers and so on.
Yes, I wanted to do that in 60 seconds, George.
Yes, sure, no problem. The first point I'll just make, and that will be just for the opening, is that there is a big we in wealth. W-E begins the word wealth. But there is also a big I in rich. And that in and of itself is profound. The we in wealth tells us that no man is an island. We need support of our family, our friends. We need inspiration. We need to surround ourselves with advisors ahead of us and also mentors that mean us well, that listen, that are brutally honest, and that care enough to hold our hands along the way. We need suppliers, we need customers. We can't do it alone. And we need a shared plan that incentivizes others to achieve their goals, not your goals, their goals, while they in turn pay due attention in achieving your wealth goals. So for me, I don't seek to be rich. Shocking. I don't seek to be rich. I seek to be wealthy. And there lies the difference in, I believe, in our conversation about wealth creation, that as young men, older men, and all viewers, that we need to see the difference. Don't seek to be rich, seek to be wealthy. Because the rich swap limited assets for luxury liabilities. You know what I'm saying? They swap their limited edition assets for luxury glistening liabilities. That's basically how it goes for the typical rich. And they swap what was at first a noble pursuit of prosperity, and end up in a rat race of now, instead of pursuing prosperity in a noble way, they swap that for expensive suits of profiling, possibly excessive partying, and pride that may befall them. While the wealthy, in contrast, the wealthy, instead of swapping limited assets with luxury liabilities, the wealthy swap their best ideas for the freedom of time, making money work for you, they say. The wealthy,
yes, indeed.
Yes, and the wealthy grow enriched by humility, horizons, and hedging against risk, which will come out in discussions. So the wealthy understand that it's not about how much you earn that matters, it's how much you keep. And that's my opening remarks as we look at the topic of wealth creation, business innovation, and the prosperity of all Jamaicans.
Thank you very much, George. Alfred Thomas, Managing Director, Pioneer Manufacturing.
Please unmute.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, Alfred, hearing you now. Good afternoon.
It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to see Sir Peter after many years. I remember 1986 when I was in Boston and came back to Jamaica. Citibank at that time was Gillette's account. So, Peter, nice to see you. And Minister, nice to see you too, sir. Country boy, Lime Tree Garden, St. Anne, farming, less than 10 acres of land our father used to farm different crops and to raise cows, and then enabled us to go to school so that all our parents, children have been able to make it to be successful people in different parts of the world. Went on to Kaiser 2 years after high school and was being promoted and decided that was moved on to Micro Teachers College because the backside money was nice, but I didn't want to stay at the Kaiser. For Paul, when our salaries were deducted from, or we had investments and our bank account was with Victoria Mutual. And so what would have happened then is that our money was deducted from our salaries, came to Kingston, and we came to Kingston once per year in January to pick up our calendar and for our bank account to be updated. Fast forward a little bit, went on to Michael, taught for 2 years at Kingston Technical. Fast forward a little bit, went on to Purdue, big city, West Lafayette, 40,000 students, survived. Went on to Harvard, survived. Went on to Gillette. To be at the head office in Boston is awesome because you are working with people who would have gone through the different development stages of their company in different parts of the world. And so you were not exposed to the best marketing people and best finance people in the world. Gillette saw the future and the potential in me. And within a short while, Gillette said, boy, you didn't have the training. So after 6 months joined the company, Gillette decided to send me to Canada for 6 months for exposure. Came back to Boston. And when I came back to Boston, the president of Gillette Canada said to my vice president, who was the vice president for Latin America, if you are not going to keep Alfred, I will take him in Canada. Okay? Fast forward to that, stayed in Boston, traveled all part of Latin America for Gillette, launched many big products, launched Gillette Good News. And in many cases, our distributors would say, wow, how can you use a blade for 5 shavings and then you throw it away? Today, Gillette Good News is one of the top products in the world. Launched Sensor, came back to Jamaica, managed Gillette Caribbean, the marketing division, grew their shares throughout the Caribbean as far as up to Bermuda, the Bahamas, and came back and steady hands to grow their business. After Gillette, I did not want to leave Gillette. And a large distributor in Jamaica, I met with him 12 times. He wanted to take me away from their company, and from Gillette. And I met with him. The rest is history. When I went into that company, no budget was prepared. All they did was just to have units and values, and then the rest is history. I said to them, you must do a budget because you must, and this is one of my first points I want to make. As you now start to create wealth, you must organize yourself to have a budget, strategic planning, etc., etc. So we guided the company. Total sales for that year was $59 million. When I left that company, the division I managed had gone up to $4.5 billion. Left that company, started Pioneer Manufacturing. One of the first brands we got was the Chlorado bleach. Chlorado is a household name in Jamaica, but it was dormant for many years. And so when we bought it, we said our objective basically is to grow that brand for that brand to become the #1 brand it was many years ago. Today, Chlorado bleach is the #1 brand in Jamaica as a bleach, sold to all different markets. The brand is now being exported. But our company is not only Clordo. We represent many multinational companies, one of which is the company Diversity. We are the exclusive distributors of those products in Jamaica, in the hotels, in the manufacturing sector. We have built their business. And when we took over the business after 7 years, they said to us, they had a subsidiary here in Jamaica, and it's the first time in so many years that their profit for Jamaica grew so rapidly. Today, we are all over the country. We export the brand. And so my contribution here today is to say to anybody who is listening, you can do it, you can get there, and I'll be happy to share many other points as we chat in this very, very August panel.
Excellent, excellent. And just before, well, let me again welcome those watching on PBC Jamaica, those watching on Scene Online. Again, thanks to Andrew's Memorial Estate Church Men's Ministry for putting this on. Some of you may say, well, you know, some of the statements may be long. I don't think they're long. What it is that each individual is giving you their path to where they have been. And I think that's a very important part of why we are here, because it is easy to say is to sit Alfred Thomas in front of you and say, Alfred, give me some advice. But Alfred has to tell you his journey for you to see the things he has navigated, for you to also see if there are similar things that are in your horizon. And if he can overcome that hurdle or to take that decision that has yielded results, you can also take the same thing. To see Peter Bunting's journey, to hear Floyd Green talk about not being to the manner born and yet being at this stage where he's a cabinet minister, to hear from LG Ramakhan about the educational path that he took, not one high school, different high schools, everything. That's all part of the process, because each individual is unique, just like yourself out there. And each of the stories of success could mention something, telling those stories could mention something that could help you on your own journey. So there will be time for interaction among the panelists, but just digest what is being said by each man insofar as their own journey to this point is concerned. I think it has much utility. And so to close this segment, Paul Elliott, VMBS Deputy CEO, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, and good evening to all the viewers online. I understand you have PBC, YouTube, and some other social media platforms with wide viewership. So I want to say welcome to everyone, and I hope we add value to the discussion this evening and share some perspectives that will make the matter of wealth creation and surviving crises a little better for you. My own background, I will be the one person to probably stay within the 3 minutes. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Nothing dissimilar to some of the other panelists. Lucy boy grew up in the country, you know, with a mother who was largely a housewife for all of my days going to school, and a father who worked in maintenance and could fix anything with his hand. But lessons taught to me by a mother who was not an educated woman was that your education means should mean everything to you, and so focus on what you have to do. So, I wasn't a scholar in school. I think I realized the seriousness of my my own journey once I got near to the end of high school. Like Minister Green, worked through university. Also worked and paid for my MBA. My journey in banking started just by chance while waiting to join the army, because that's where I wanted to go, fly planes. But I had good mentors and I stayed. As a country boy, you kind of need to have your money in your hand. But I kind of grew with banking and fell in love with it. What I'll say about education is that I don't want to talk about education only in the context of going to school and attaining degrees. Before my high school became a comprehensive high school, it was a secondary school and a high school in the parish. And I do have lots of time for artisans and practical people who can fix things with their hands. My own father in retirement became a locksmith afterwards and still makes a good living at 8 years old doing it. Well, let's talk a little bit about what a precursor to what I'll speak about later on is a crisis. And what is a crisis? by definition, is a time of difficulty. I myself saw another crisis a few years ago, and at that stage, I happened to have been away from Jamaica, a 10-year journey, working in Bermuda and also in Cayman, and saw firsthand, a financial institution losing the entire capital accumulated with it, for that entity, and had to be recapitalized. But that's a different kind of crisis. That one was caused by some other things. This one is another kind of crisis. But in the middle of all of this, we have to look at customers' confidence from where we sit. Every one of us, how do we deal with crisis? It's all about confidence. And I'll speak about confidence and how that can help us with decisions around wealth creation, wealth preservation, further on. I will make an effort. I know Peter will cover Bunting, that is, will cover the wealth strategies for companies and so on. I will try to speak about the small man, the person that listen to this and I can think, okay, if I'm earning $250,000 per month, sort of civil servants, how do I create wealth? How do I talk about financial independence when I don't earn a lot? Peter also mentioned about the time value of money. So I'll speak about that, when I'm asked to expand a little more in my segment. So hopefully, like I said, I can talk about the things that will make you can walk away with a practical handbook from a banker's perspective in terms of understanding what you need to do to not only build wealth, but also preserve wealth in times of uncertainty. And may I dare say, we are in perhaps one of the most uncertain periods in modern history. So I leave it there, and we'll pick the discussion up once we get on the other side.
Excellent, gentlemen. Excellent. Again, thank you to those who have tuned in. I've been getting some private messages from persons right across the globe. All right, so let's change gears now, because here's the thing. And I'm going to start. Well, I'm putting the question first. I'm putting this question to Bunting. If anybody has anything to say to the point, you're going to do so. Unlike in the history of mankind, this was one where in countries across the world,
George, I'm losing you. I don't
or any of the things. Peter Bunting, are you hearing me?
You are freezing up. I'm not sure if I'm the only one.
You may have been the only one. Are you hearing me now?
Yeah, we're hearing you better now.
I'm hearing you now.
All right. I was saying to you that unlike previous crises where the governments turned off the taps, so if you had money, if you had investments, you really had them because the commerce was shut down because of the nature of this crisis, a pandemic. So it's not as if a world war caused systems and infrastructure to be destroyed. It's not as if a housing bubble burst. We have a very good recollection of what that can do, having experienced one not so long ago. It's a different crisis. In this different crisis that we are experiencing, should people keep their powder dry, or should they take significant risks? What would your approach be if you were asked that question by a room full of investors?
Okay, well, let me tell you what our approach was at Proven. Most financial crises first manifest themselves as a liquidity crisis. So you will recall when the very first few weeks when it became evident that this was now a global pandemic, the stock markets dived. Everything sort of froze up. The whole financial system froze up. The logistics networks, etc., started to become chaotic. In that first response, it is generally prudent to keep your powder dry, so to speak. Yes. Maintain your liquidity. Be conservative until you see how the dust settles. I think central banks very quickly recognized that they had to provide adequate liquidity to the financial system, which were then able to provide adequate liquidity to the real sector. And so within, I would say, the first 3 or 4 months of the crisis, it became clear that it was not going to, or the tip of the spear of the crisis wasn't going to be liquidity. As soon as that becomes clear, then you start transitioning and looking for opportunities. What is it that I will be able to invest in now at a more attractive price than I otherwise would have, and which is going to see me getting good returns a year down the road or 2 years down the road. And so you will recall we actually ended up signing in the first quarter of this year to acquire 2 companies, one in Barbados and one in Cayman. So we have become very aggressive. We did an APO in January, and we're deploying those funds. And this, in a sense, mirrors my first experience of a crisis, financial crisis, which was the FinSAC crisis in the 90s. Yes. When at DB&G then, Darren Bunting and Golding was a fledgling organization. Much bigger companies were being buffeted in the financial storm. And we were able to say, what is the opportunity in this? And we started a product called a government securities fund, because it was completely backed by government securities. It was one of the products that actually took us not only through the crisis, but allowed us to grow tremendously. So just to, in a nutshell, to wrap up, initially, you need to kind of step back and assess, is there going to be a liquidity problem? How bad is it going to impact my company or me personally? Once you're able to get past that initial uncertainty and you have a better sense, not necessarily certainty, but a better sense of how this is going to play out, then I think that's the time when you can seize opportunities. And if you look at stock markets, look at the US, the major markets in the US, they're now all significantly above where they were pre-pandemic. As people, see opportunities, as there's more liquidity in the system, their asset prices are going up significantly.
Yes, thank you for that. Alfred, so here's a scenario. A husband and wife team, they had an arrangement where they went to the place in Spanish Town and they got the 100% bleach. I think it's a company called Matrix Chemicals. And they had a small operation. Pandemic come and things slowed down. But the husband has a little piece of money, as we say in Jamaica, and he's toying with the idea of expanding and getting into more things because he's looking down the road. He's seeing a great need for cleaning items in households and in companies, and sanitation and sanitization now has become a staple in places of commerce, and he wants to go. But the wife is telling him, no, wait a while, wait 6 months, wait 9 months, wait and see what is further down the landscape. Alfred, based on your experience at Pioneer, what would your advice to that couple be?
The advice is going to be twofold, in that what we have seen is that because of the profile of our company supplying sanitizers and cleaning products to most of the large hotels in Jamaica and to the manufacturing companies. Last year, March, when the COVID was starting to hit Jamaica, that month was one of our best months in the year. In the history of our company for 15 years, that month was the best month. And what we saw was people wanted sanitizers, people wanted soaps to wash their hands, etc., etc. But April, the beginning of our new financial year, we started to see a situation where our traditional customers still bought the sanitizer, etc., etc. But my team would tell me that they get feedback from the market that many sanitizers are coming out. So the wife could be sensible in that she said to the husband, be careful, because that thing is not going to last long in terms of the sanitizers. So many people came on the market, started to make sanitizers with 70% alcohol. But within a short while, a number of those persons I haven't done the survey to see what if they have failed, but they have had to back off. Companies like ourselves, we had contracts. We were seasoned in the marketplace.
Yes.
All right. But on the other hand, no, my wife would say to me, let's go export. So we took the bleach. And by April, May, we were in Cayman. We had been export, Barbados, Jamaica. So because a thing like bleach thrives very well in a situation where sanitizing and cleaning is very, very, very important. The other thing, so I'm saying, listen to the husband, or listen to the wife, Mr. Husband, go for it, take the risk, but be very careful as to how you're going to take the risk, because you want to go long-term in terms of your business. Because so I'm saying is, in summary, many persons started to sell sanitizers, the example you gave, but they did not survive during that period. Persons like ourselves, we had contracts with big hotels, etc., etc. We continue to supply our sanitizers and our soaps and many of our products under bleach throughout the year. All right? We did not lay off one person. In fact, we employed and our business survived.
Yes. Minister, thank you for that. Minister, the 25-year-old, his aunt left him 23 acres in South St. Elizabeth. He wants now, like Peter, he's 25. He wants, like Peter Bunting, to be able to retire at 40. Bunting didn't retire at 40. Well, stop working for people from then. Bunting did that at 46. But he wants in 15 years to not have to be going to anybody, reporting to any boss. So he has that land, but he hears you talk about education and agriculture. So he's saying, wait, what should I do? Does it by education, does the minister mean go back to school, learn how to plant tomato, know what kind of conditions I should keep it under, learn how to plant other crops to support that? Or should I learn about that, but see if I can get a colleague to assist me to find out how it is that I can get tomato when I plant it to hotels on the other side of the island, the smaller hotels, because the big ones already have their contracts locked in. Should I find out how I can get a processor to change this tomato into paste if I have a glut and I can't sell it at farm gate and I can't sell it to my hoteliers on the northern side of the island? By education, what does a minister really mean at my age and with land at my disposal? What would you say to that man, Minister?
I would say it means both. You know, what you've outlined, George, is really the sort of business approach that we need our people to take to agriculture. The reality is that not just should you be looking at how you're going to farm, if you're going to go into farming, and we can have a broad discussion. Agriculture is not just about basic farming, and we can talk about agro-processing and the likes. But let us say your example, 25 acres. Yes, you do know if the soil is ideal. You need to know if the soil is ideal for tomatoes, or should we be planting melon, or should we be planting cantaloupe? And then what seeds are you going to use? What is the fertilizer treatment? Are you going to use a drip irrigation system? Are you going to really go into what we now call precision agriculture to ensure that it is not guesswork that you're doing agriculture under, that you know the cost of production so you can know your level of profit? So education is important in all of that. So all of that is critical to the decision that you will make, even from the very primary basis. What will I plant? But additionally, you have to look at the business of agriculture. And the business means that you're definitely going to be planting to a market. You know, in Alfred's story, you would have seen the difference. He survived because he had set markets that he engages. He had contracts. And a lot of our farmers, oftentimes, they plant and then seek out the market. Part of what we're trying to do is to realign the agricultural system. So you start from the market, you see what is in demand and what prices are the average prices that are being paid. So you know if you invest $500,000, what will your return be in terms of what are you looking for to take care of your family and to be able to put back in. So it's very important that you look at the market side of it and that our agriculture be market driven. So you may not have that competence, but you just said it. Are you going to now engage somebody else that will look at the market side? Or are you going to engage somebody else who will do the primary production and you focus on the market of it, depending on what your core competence is? What we want more people to see is that agriculture is a legitimate business venture and has to be approached like that. And from the government perspective, clearly, part of what we're trying to do is to provide a technical support. So I would say to that young farmer, firstly, reach out to RADA, bring in the technical team. So as you look for the courses that you could look on online, can you go to CASE? Is there an agricultural school like Ebony Park? Are they offering online courses? Even some of our fertilizer companies, quite frankly, offer short courses in nutrition management and around products and types and plants that you can. So do your research clearly. So bring in RADA, reach out to RADA and say, all right, you have 23 acres, you want to embark. Can you give me some guidance? You should have a business plan. You have no know-how of doing a business plan. So you're going to reach out to the Agro Invest Corporation, AIC, and you're going to say, I have acres in St. Elizabeth, 20 acres. I don't know what to do with it. Can you help me work through this business idea? And we have that facility where you can go in, and you don't have to go in nowadays. They can link with you and you work out a business plan. And again, you explore the markets. I would say, for example, if you're going to do tomatoes, you have to look at the shelf life. Part of what we're going to do in government now, we recognize that one of the challenges our farmers face is just a lack of storage, not the capacity that when they invest and they bring their products, what we call times of glut, often quickly turn into times of shortage because we don't have the storage to extend the shelf life. So government is going to be this year working to establish some storage facilities across the country that can help the farmers. So firstly, in your research, you have to look at if you're going to plant, do you have storage? Do you have the market? And what is your return on your investment? And if you do all of that, right, and especially now in this time of crisis, you will do well.
Excellent. Thank you for that. LG, prepare yourself. I'm coming to you. Paul, let me give you the scenario. You started it, so I was gonna let me jump on the scenario you started to give. So a young woman, beg your pardon. She is 25 again, no children. She is out of her parents' house, thankfully. She goes home after she gives Nigel Clark his, and she does the other things that are statutory. She goes home with 400K in that account, Paul. But she's paying for a BMW that she bought because her friends from up above Constant Spring, they all professionals and they all have the nice car, so she got one. But when she pays on the car, she rents. Rent is steep as well, and of course, here and maintenance and all of that. But she really don't have a lot left. And after 11 months, not even a year, after 11 months, assessing how much she takes home versus what she has in investments and her progress down the road of owning her own home or maybe even venturing into business for herself, she realizes that, boy, I don't have anything to show for what I take home, and I earn significantly more than most Jamaicans, even at that level. Mm-hmm. Who do I go to for help? What is the way out of this cycle of paying for consumables, paying the tax man, paying for car loan, and not getting anything? And I don't want to be trapped here by the time I'm 40, 45 years old on this treadmill like a hamster. Your advice along those lines.
Well, that's a common story, actually. And, so what I'll say is that, financial education is key. So I'm going to say to her, that young lady, come to BMBS and let us get you on a pathway to financial independence. Financial literacy, as mentioned by one of the previous speakers, is important. So, if she's earning $400,000, she's 25. So let's say she takes home 400. So I'm going to give her a $500,000 a month salary. But she's 25. So she's going to experiment the car. She doesn't have a family to take care of. She's in what we call the early earning years, right? And this is before you get into having children, where the family commitment years kick in and all your money going to education and taking care of the household, and so on. So it's not too late for her to get enough financial advice to kind of turn this around. But what I'll say to that young lady is that in a crisis, we're talking about a crisis now, the banks last year started a program of giving waivers and so on to, to persons who are having financial difficulties. So for that young lady, first things first, take advantage of all the waivers. So if she was earning $500,000 and she was paying for the BMW, she's renting, chances are she could get some reduction or in her rental commitment from her landlord. She would get waivers from her bank for the car loan payment for probably 6 months, and those are being given out without persons asking for it. So she could save probably over a 6 month period, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. Rule of thumb says that you're supposed to try and have 6 months savings to kind of withstand any period of prolonged difficulty. She could probably save 3 months or 4 months income in that time. But the key thing here is to look at what is she paying that landlord? Because one of the things you have to do in a crisis is to look at first lowering your cost, right? So you start buying budget. You start buying from the vendor, the street side, sweet potato and bananas and yams, and here comes the farming story again. I grew up planting everything that I have seen across JA on a 1 acre lot. Secondly, is to refinance your debts. So if she has a credit card alongside the car, she may need to look at how can I refinance. Another thing is to take advantage, like I said, of the waivers and to create a little nest egg, and that would be the start for this young person. I mean, she's committed most of her money to buying this car, and so maybe I would say look at selling the car. Have a sit down. Have a sit down, because it's about customer confidence. If world markets have been disrupted, banks are timid to lend, for certain risky, ventures. Look at how she can change the situation, turning that rental of $100,000 a month into a mortgage commitment. So the first thing is to walk into your financial institution and get a pre-assessment done, a pre-approval done as to what you qualify for. Given my income, given the commitments I have, what can I buy at this stage? And I'm sure once you take that car out of the equation, more than likely she can afford one of the units, one of the starter units, starting at 14 or 15 or 16, whatever the figure is. But that, I would say, is the start for her. What life stage is she at? Early earning years. But you don't want to carry too much debt into the family commitment years, because that's when you start to put pressure on the family. You start to put pressure on your ability to send your kids to university as they get older, right? And you start your life, your married life or your family commitment years with significant debt, and it's hard to get out from under significant debt.
Thank you very much, Paul. LG, so here's a 40-year-old woman. She has changed careers. She hates working for people. She has visions of, she has ambitions rather, of owning and running her own business, but she doesn't know what kind. But here's her skill set. She can code. She understands economics beyond the basic principle of economics of supply and demand. Well, although if you understand supply and demand, you understand economics, but she gets deeper into that, LG. So she understands the economics. She can code. She daydreams about providing services to call center operators, people in certain kinds of business who mine and use a lot of data and everything. But she doesn't know how to organize herself from a cyber economics. That concept isn't even in her head. But she doesn't know how to organize herself to form a company to be able to sell services to the companies that she dreams about working with, and not having to wake up and go and work for the man. LG, based on your experience and your expertise, give her some advice for me.
All right, I'm happy to. All right, so first of all, it's not money that makes you rich. It is your skills that make you rich. So, but off the bat, you say that she has skills, and that's a good footing, because that means you can deliver some kind of value proposition that is so unique to a unique target market that she can tap into that and to convert that skill into cash. So that's wonderful. There are a few insights I would let her into. And this may be a troubling thought for our viewers, but listen to this statement. It changed my life. It says, if you can't make money without money, you can't make money with money. I repeat, if you can't make money without money, you can't make money with money. Do you agree with that? Viewers, do you agree with that? Because what this is driving at is that you don't need money to make money. It's a miracle. Well, we serve a miracle working God, but it's actually a key financial concept that is often missed for persons who are seeking to leap out of the regular 9 to 5, right? We must understand that your salary is a bribe that they give you to forget your dreams. So I'll say to that 40-year-old lady, don't forget your dreams. Pursue your dreams, because here is the answer to the riddle about if you can't make money without money, you can't make money without it. It is the power of the pen. You got that right? The power of the pen. And that is an acronym, PEN. The first thing is to have a plan. That's a P. I'm happy that she has some, understand the supply and demand and that sort of thing, because it's going to help her out for preparing her plan, the business plan, the pilot projects, the implementation plan. And here's a little economics 101 without think about it as economics. What you really want to do, speaking to the young lady, is that, she 40 is young, is that you want to identify 2 groups of people, and you don't need to have the money. The first group is the group that has a need, a desperate need. And this same group should have liquidity. In other words, some money to spend, what we call in economics effective demand. So that's the first set of people you want to find. They have a need and they have money that can effectively allow supply that need. So that's the first group. And then the second group is that and other people that have the speed and the quality. So need and liquidity, that's the demand, and speed and quality to supply in a swift time at the given level of quality. And all you have to do is to be the middle person to now connect those 2 groups together, what we call a market, so that now you can supply in that quadrant that Stephen Covey speaks about, the urgent and important quadrant. And in that urgent and important quadrant, there lies the ways dreaming of. So don't let upon your dreams. So with that plan is to ensure that it connects those that have a need and liquidity and those that have the speed and quality. And what that prepares you to do is a plan that will include the products to solve that need and to supply it, the best productivity to do it, the best production, and also at the best prices. And even if you don't have all those things in the best form, the product, the productivity, the production, and the prices, once you have the best interest of the customer at heart, that customer will work with you to grow your business and to be able to achieve more and to sign off on that 9 to 5 and chase those dreams. And that quadrant that I spoke about in planning will not just make money, it will make what I call moony. Moony. In other words, it's the moo, the cow, the cash cow, we call it in business. The cash cow that will help you to now diversify into your other dreams. So that's a P in plan that answers the riddle. The E, the P in pen. The E in pen is enthusiasm. Don't lose that enthusiasm. It is passion that is needed. They say people can deny your logic, but they can't deny your enthusiasm. So keep that enthusiasm up, that passion to give the elevator pitch, that passion to fall in a ditch, that passion that wealthy is not about getting rich. And with that, you would have switched on your passion and switched on a mindset. So you would have switched on new habits and you would have switched on new horizons that will give you that energy and give you that resolve to now create your own. So you don't have to have money to make money. Money is just one form of power. You can connect with persons financially, which is a network in Penn, and you're able to now connect with people that are smarter than you and connect through conferences, books, contacts, social professional memberships that bring you into a new league, a league of a business owner and a league of an investor.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. All right, I'm going to do some quick fire questions now around the horn, and then we take some questions that have been coming into the chat. Let me go with the minister. Minister, so we've spoken about agriculture, the crops, but here's another scenario. So this is a mother. She's 45, mother of 4. She has land, a lot of grass on it, Minister. Guinea grass, African star grass, you name it, a lot of grass. You know that the Guinea grass is good grass, African star grass is also good grass. She has 13 heads of cows. She has some goats as well. She has a coop that can take 50 layers. She can put in 100 white fowl as well. She has all of that, and she's saying to herself, well, might as well I just carry on going on as I have been, because it is too late for me to even think of wealth, and I don't know. I don't know where to go for assistance to make this 13 head of cows become 50, to increase what I have. There's just nothing for me, so I just go and continue barely above hand to mouth, because there's no hope from where wealth creation from what I have, and there's nobody to help me. She's in despair, Minister. Does she need to be in despair? Does there exist somewhere where the light can be shown to her?
Yeah, so again, she doesn't need to be in despair, and she can take a number of different approaches to come out of her despair. Clearly, the fact that she has had some land, she has some cattle, she is not doing bad. She has a foundation from which to start on, and probably that is what she has been using to keep her family going. What she needs to do now is to take the next step. Part of the challenge we do have in agriculture, I'll be very frank with you, is that our private sector, our banks, still have not aligned themselves in a way to really help finance our agricultural practitioners. It's still much too hard for that lady, for example, to go into a bank, a private financial institution, and to get capital so as to not use her capital to drive her business. And that is something that we definitely need to fix. And that is something that the government has been engaged in the private sector on. And I'm happy that Paul is on the call, and I know he has a soft spot for farming. We need more banks to allow that her cattle that are of tremendous value. And sometimes we say cattle, and if you know how much for just one head of cow, George, we're talking, if you say she has 13, we're talking she has money into millions. Just understand that, right? But can she use that to leverage a low interest loan so that she can probably set up a slaughterhouse, so that instead of just selling her cattle to somebody who will slaughter it, she can now do her own slaughtering, employ somebody, and start selling different cuts of meat. So clearly what she needs to look on now is how can she move from just being a primary producer into an agro processor, right? And how can she get that capital? I would say to her clearly, contact the PC Bank. We still have a PC Bank that does offer some loans for that sort of investment. We also have grant programs for female farmers. Again, she should contact the Agro Invest Corporation, or she can also contact directly the DBJ through their Ignite grant, and all of these things can be found online. They directly target those in agriculture. I would also say to her, clearly, she's on a gold mine. She can sell some of the grass. Grass is a product. But one of the things we often talk about in agriculture is the need for land. Agriculture has passed that. Again, we now have vertical farms. We have farms that use hydroponics. They have no soil at all. What you used to farm in 1 acre, George, I can do that and more. In fact, I can put 5 acres in a 1 acre slot using PVC pipes and a hydroponic system. Again, RADA has some of that expertise. 4-H Club, if you're a young farmer, has some of that expertise that is important. The last thing I will say is that oftentimes we go down the agricultural journey and we think of it as a single person enterprise. And we are oftentimes afraid to bring in partners. Now, if she really wants to expand in terms of quickly, what she may need to do is use that now as her investment into a joint venture that she's going to get somebody now who has the capital to leverage her heads of cow, leverage her chicken coop, and probably set up something more intensive, because clearly she has the expertise to expand her production while finding market. So let us call her Stacy. Maybe she need now to do Stacy Farms, to brand what she is doing and put it out there. So it's not just, she's not selling just cattle or beef. She's selling something from Stacy Farms as a distinctive taste, flavor, right? Because it is grown in St. Elizabeth, the best parish in our country. You know, so the reality is that she has to also know, as Sir Ramakhan was saying, come up with a plan or engage somebody, maybe look to partner with somebody younger as well, or somebody older, but somebody who has the capital or the idea or the know-how to move that forward. And I hope we can talk a little bit more also about just the demand that's out there and fisheries, right? She has so much land. Has she thought about doing inland fishing? Has she thought about the fact that we don't have enough hand to sell tilapia, right? So there are a lot of opportunities, and she's starting from a good place because she has the land.
Thank you very much. Senator, I've set up a meeting with you and a young couple, common law. They're in their early 30s. Both of them extremely debt averse, because like my generation, born in the 80s, our parents told us, don't take on the debt. No matter what you do, don't take on the debt to do anything. So they buy their furniture cash. They don't do hire purchase, but they have a business idea, Senator. They want to be able to put that business on the road, but the capital that they need, they don't have it. They've been saving together for 6 years now since they've been together, coming out of university, and they still can't reach where they need to get the business going. And they don't want to take on any debt because the parents tell them debt no good, and both of them together are of the same mind. And I've brought them to you. You have a meeting with them because you're going to tell them that, look, there is a way out, and you don't have to be as afraid of debt as you've been weaned and schooled to do. What would you say to them, sir?
The first thing I would say to them is productive assets pay for themselves. And, you know, if there's one takeaway that I think, you know, I'm giving to your listeners is that line: productive assets pay for themselves. Now, their parents were wise to tell them, don't go to Courts or Singer or wherever and hire purchase, because whatever they were getting there were not productive assets. I mean, they may have been nice things, television, stove, couch, whatever, but that's entirely different from something that is going to generate income for them. And, you know, there's a lot of people confuse assets and liabilities. So, for example, a car that you're going to use just personally to up and down, transport yourself around, that is a liability for you. But a car that you're going to use as a taxi, or a pickup that you're going to use to transport agricultural goods, that's an asset. So the same exact product or the same exact piece of equipment, depending on the use you put it to, can be either a productive asset or something that's just the value is going to deteriorate and ends up being a drag on you, as the young lady example used earlier, who had the BMW or the Benz, I can't remember, luxury vehicle that was eating up her fairly high income. So the message they got from their parents, I wouldn't invalidate that. Afford it. Don't sacrifice the future for today's consumption. But on the other hand, productive assets pay for themselves. So don't be afraid to take on debt to buy productive assets.
Thank you for that, Senator. Thank you for that. Paul, this question now, I want you to, you know, when I'm talking to my daughter about terms, about words or concepts, I tell her that, look, it's better to be able to explain things than to define them. Yeah. So I want you to define financial literacy with an explanation.
Okay. All right. So literacy means that you are literate, and that's the definition. Financial literacy means that you have an understanding of all things financial. So at VMBS, what we have done is set out to explain to our customers in very simple terms, right, what it is that you have to do to get to financial independence. Right? So we start with a need for explaining basic terms, what it means to save, what it means to have, to graduate to investments that are more complex, what it means to borrow, what's the cost of borrowing, all that kind of, all that good information that allows you to make really good decisions about your life. The minister spoke a while ago about, a fairly high income at 500,000. But the problem is with Jamaica is this: we have probably one of the lowest per capita, incomes, around, and so we don't have a mass affluent society. We have people who are living what we call hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck in Jamaica. And so when you start to discuss the whole thing of financial independence, financial literacy, with persons, they say, boy, I can't afford it. I get stopped by the police driving from Kingston to Montego Bay. And I oftentimes, I hope some police officers are watching, the first thing I do is I start to ask if they have a house. Every police on the North Coast have a business card. And I've heard a police officer who said to me, I can't afford my house. So what I did with him was I said, listen, come, give me a call. I said, make sure you call me, And he did call, or with his wife. I'm happy to say that after some time of me explaining what it is to construct a personal financial statement, and let's talk about that, because that's important. What is a personal financial statement? Talk about balance sheets and cash flows of big companies, and and so on. Alfred will talk about it, and Peter will talk about using people's money to create conglomerates and stuff. But if you take a simple personal financial statement that details your assets, your liabilities, so your assets essentially is going to be, and I start with the most liquid one. So you have cash. How much money you have in your bank account? $1,000. All right, fine. So do you have an insurance policy? It's good to take that out as well with some kind of endowment, especially when you're cash earning attached to it as a rider when you're young, because the compound factor kicks in again. So cash value and insurance policy, not the face value. That's is only good for when you pass on, but the cash value and insurance policy is also cash. Then you get into any other investments in terms of stocks or bonds, for persons who can't afford to buy stocks or savvy enough to go look at the history of the listed entities. You can buy unit trust, and that's where the experts sit down and put together a list of companies in one security, and you purchase it. Good time to buy now when stocks are down, because then in 2 or 3 years time, the value of your units you're holding in a unit trust could double. I've seen that. In this time, and so you're coming on your personal financial statements. It's cash value on other policies, it's investments, and then that kind of summarizes your current assets. You get into what else do you own? Do you own a home? And do you have any equity in your home? So if you have your home valued at $100,000 and you only owe $50,000 in equity, then you get into other things that you own that are of value, equipment for your trade if you're a sole proprietor. Then you get to your liabilities. And you do not want to have liabilities. These are the bank loans for the car, the mortgage that you have, any credit card debt. And then you start to get into what is your net worth. So when we talk about financial literacy, we provide information under this umbrella that allows the man on the street to understand that, listen, I am worth, you see people reading about the net worth of the stars, I am worth $100,000, but what do I want to be worth in 5 years' time? So it's always the value of the assets, less the liabilities, to get to your net worth. And it's important to pay attention to your net worth. As bankers, you know, and the minister talk about the, you know, people in agriculture and so on. That lady, by the time she's finished going through the PC Bank and the ACB and so on, DBJ, we're ready to speak with her. The challenge you have with persons who are in that informal sector. We've always seen agriculture as this small subsistence kind of a thing. Agriculture in first world countries is big business. You get invited to the White House, you contribute to political campaigns for the minister and so on. If you're a farmer, and when you meet people and they say, what do you do? Oh, I'm a wheat farmer. That means that you are a multi-millionaire. You make money in farming. And so we have to give persons the financial literacy for them to transition to financial independence. And financial independence could mean something for you, George. It could mean something else for me. But the key thing is providing information that makes you fully aware of what it is to handle money, to build wealth, to preserve wealth, to grow wealth, and ultimately, not to buy your kids a house while you're alive and give them a house, because you strip them of their you know, ambition sometimes, but to have what you call generational wealth. So when you pass on, or when you are much older and your kids are at the stage where they want to go do something, can you leverage, right, some of that net worth, convert it back to cash, or provide a guarantee to allow your kids to do better than you? So Peter got some help when he was much younger because his father worked hard. We didn't just give him the money to go spend. He was able to leverage generational wealth to build and so on. So hopefully I've explained that accurately for you. Financial literacy does in fact provide the groundwork for financial independence.
Yes, you've done well. Very good. A top tip there for you folks. Definition by way of explanation. You can only define by explaining when you are a master of your subject matter. So thank you very much for that, Paul. Alfred, so here's another scenario for you, Alfred. Father and his daughter, they have some capital. Yeah, they want to see if they can go into the manufacturing business, but they don't know what to manufacture, Alfred. So she does a basic thing. She has what she thinks is a brilliant idea. Some people may say it's not so brilliant. Some people may say it's basic, but it is brilliant. She goes to a couple supermarkets and she looks at the shelf to see who are the bleach manufacturers who are there, who manufacturing soap powder, who doing the bar soap, the ones that the detergent ones, who doing all of these things, making a list of what is there, because they're saying to themselves, well, we don't want to enter somewhere that's crowded and that's well served, and they have dreams, Alfred. They want to have the impact that Lasco had when, as a child, I remember ready milk was the only thing on the shelf, and then Lasco came and ready milk stopped selling. Everybody just buying Lasco until I think Lasco ended up buying ready milk or something like that. I'm not quite sure what that part, but they want to have a big impact. They want to have a bang, and they want to know what to manufacture. How do they read the tea leaves now to see what is being needed? Apart, you spoke earlier about sanitizer and cleaning agents and so forth, but you know, you had this father-daughter combination in front of you, and you wanted to give them some insight into what it is that they could try and what they should look for, to tell them what it is that it would be worthwhile trying at this time. What would you say to them?
I see that as mentorship and guidance. Just glancing to my right, I look at the fact that over the years, I've always looked at, you know, being a good mentor to young professionals, and also I got that benefit of being mentored by professionals. So you have to look at how you're going to pivot, all right? Because like in Jamaica, many people look at their friends and see them doing something and they want to do the same thing. And that is considered to be homogeneous, meaning everybody's selling t-shirt, everybody's selling bleach, everybody's selling the same thing. But you have to reach a point where you can differentiate your brand that you're going to start off with. So here's it, they have some money. They have to be very, very, very careful. And first, make sure you do a business plan, you know, or there are sources and there are places in Jamaica where they can get some guidance to do a business plan, or their mentor can help you to do a business plan, because you don't want to go out there and start to sell something that you see other companies selling, because remember, they would have done the research and did the investment to make sure the research was done so that they can go into the market with a target to get X percentage of the market share to grow their business. First, okay, so they have a little money. They have to be careful now about the funding. They can use their peers, their family to help finance that project, to identify the brand that they want to sell. So you have to have a business plan, you have to have some money. And then other thing that is very, very important as the mother and father, or the father and daughter, or mother and daughters want to do that business, you have to make sure you have that company registered. If you're going to have call it George's shop, it has to be registered with the Companies Office of Jamaica. Okay? Then you have to get a lawyer to make sure that the both of you set up that organization, that little company very, very well. Then you get an accountant to do a business plan that gives you some projections as to the volume, the quantities of those products that you're going to sell. And then you're going to have to travel around Jamaica and determine the number of supermarkets that are there. And a supermarket in Jamaica is any business that has 2 or more cash registers. So they want to make sure that when they take the 400 supermarket, we sell to over 450 supermarkets in Jamaica. And if they want to be like us, then they want to know that they are going to sell to 400 supermarkets their product times 2 cases per month, times 12 months per year, so they can determine their volume. Then they have to also look at this, how am I going to get those products to the market? How am I going to display it on the shelves? How am I going to restock the product when it is out of stock? So those are key questions that they must ask themselves when they are going to now go into starting their own business. First, you have the idea. But you can't just sit with the idea, you need to do a business plan. You need to get an accountant, get a lawyer to do a legal document between the both of you, although it's mother and daughter, or father and daughter, to make sure that in the future, you do not have a problem. When you start to make profit and the mother or the daughter wants to buy a car or to buy a house, and you are saying to them, no, you must get permission, we must agree how you can buy that car and when you can buy that car. So it is important that you go out, see the market you're going to sell the products to, see the number of accounts you're going to sell to, establish your price for the product so that you're competitive, and don't just jump out there because somebody is selling t-shirts or they are selling a particular widget, because you're going to find yourself, like the minister said earlier, the shelf life of tomato is short. And when the farmers in St. Elizabeth produce tomato and you have a glut on the market or melon, it means therefore that the farmers are going to have an abundance. So the supply is going to be much higher than the demand. And you're going to find a situation where they'll have to give it away or sell it at low cost just to have some money in their pocket.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Alfred. George, the clock is my enemy now, but I have to give you another point and ask if you can do it for me in 120 seconds. The issue, it's a simple one for you, LG. People say, oh, you know what? They watch these infomercials or these ads on US television, US network television especially, that says, you know, there are millions to be made online. The internet can make you rich, you know. We are well into the cyber age, and the online is a gold mine. Youngsters hear that and are wondering, oh, so what do I tap into to tap into the gold mine? How do I get myself on the path to becoming rich from the internet? Because the lady on TV said online you with that, George. We'll do that in 100 seconds.
All right. Okay. Thanks. You wrote a little bit, but I think I understand the point. Right. So, well, where's the gold? Where is the gold? That's the first question. That I think needs to be answered. And gold is mined. It is mined, like when you're mining. Gold is mined in the mind. So that's where the goal is. So we're now at a stage where it is what you possess in your mind, whether it's programming skills, understanding strategy, understanding the different kinds of tools of income generating online that will help you to convert your mind into money. And there are lots of opportunities. I mean, let's take as basic as your phone on WhatsApp. I'm not getting any technical here. On WhatsApp, you need to be the product that you sell. Okay, so utilizing the statuses, your statuses, to sell things that are in demand, from masks to pepper spray to whoever it is. You can create a business through just that, WhatsApp and you and the network of people that you have. There are a number of companies, if it is Fiverr, Upwork, that do freelance, offer freelance jobs. I mean, a lot of my friends, younger folks, are earning US dollars, right, by pushing the pipeline of work in the Philippines, in the US, in Canada, in the UK, and they are essentially US employees, right? And they're able to mine that opportunity. I'm a musician. I play the bass guitar, I sing baritone and so on. I came out with a song, and someone said, you know, they could actually link me with another person who could sing that song either by solo or duet. And that person was from the Ukraine and UK. I just sent my material. They did a wow, and wow, that can be sold in larger markets than Jamaica, Ukraine, UK, and so on. And that is just making the connections. And it goes back to the point about the power of the pen. The N in pen, which I was speaking about, speaks to your network. Your network is your net worth. And the internet is that net worth.
Excellent. George, LG.
Just a quick question. There's a quick thing here. I have a couple of questions coming in, being typed in.
Yes.
I'm not sure if we'll monitor these. I've been trying to answer a few of them by typing the responses back.
Yeah, man.
Right.
I appreciate that, Paul. In fact, I'm going to go to some of them now because the clock is upon us, and I want to release people. So there, I'm going to do. Let me put them here. 1, 2, 3. I have 4 that I can take in the time. So let me see. Dwight Scott says he asked about Senator Bunting on financial literacy helping in wealth creation. I think Paul did an excellent job there, unless there's something else that Senator Bunting would want to add to what Paul said about financial literacy and the use of that, the importance of that in the realm of wealth creation. Is there anything you want to add, Senator, to that?
No, I think that was quite well handled, and I think the question was put in before Paul covered it.
Absolutely so. All right. There's a question now. I Breathe Journalism says, how can I create general wealth with this is either Minister Green or Senator Bunting. How can I create general wealth with a public sector job and one other passive income? Seems impossible. This is a hard question. Senator Bunting, you want to take a stab at it, and then Minister Green?
Yeah, so one of the things that we have to be realistic about is that it's not easy to create wealth if you don't have something to invest. So if you are sort of living on a thin margin and you don't have much to put aside, then it's going to be frustrating to say to you, well, you should invest in the stock market, or you should invest in this or invest in that, when you just don't have the surplus resources to put into that. So, which is why I kind of come back to the point where hopefully, if you didn't wait too long, but what you've done in your first 10 years or so is gain some valuable insights, some valuable business skills, some competencies, is then leverage those skills to partner with somebody and say, here, I have a great idea. I think it can make a lot of money. I don't have the capital now, but I have the sweat equity to put into the concept and to make money. And my own experience as a young man was that when you have that idea and when you have those skills and competencies, there are usually investors around who you would have networked with. You say, I'm listening to you, Mr. Ramakhan. Who you would have networked in whatever sector that you work in, and they will provide the capital. I mean, I have just personally, not institutionally, but personally, I enjoy trying to bootstrap young people with great ideas and give them a chance to be successful. So if you think that things are too close on the margin from what you're working, what you're doing, that you're not going to have a significant amount to put aside from that to invest in a passive way, then but you want to be wealthy, then you kind of have to take the dive, and be willing to develop your business plan and go to angel investors like Floyd and say, bootstrap with a few of your surplus millions, Floyd, and I'll give you a return on your investment.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Senator Bunting. Thank you very much for that. The minister as an angel investor. So I'm sure those who are watching can take a cue from what Senator Bunting said. He's not telling tales. There's an angel investor possibility there where the minister is concerned. The minister, there's one I'm going to direct at you. Shanice Lewis says, I saw recently a young mom going into rabbit rearing. How viable is that in Jamaica and why?
Yeah, so rabbit rearing is still an emerging area. We still do have a softish market for rabbit meat. It is a high quality meat. In fact, it has significant protein content, very low cholesterol content. It's probably one of the best meats that you can find out there. But Jamaicans have still not really warmed up as much to rabbit. What we do find is that a number of people are now getting into it in a more commercial business. They're now doing things like jerk rabbit, and a lot of our hotels are now looking to it. So the first thing you have to do is study the market. So I would say rabbit isn't bad, but it is still emerging. So you would have to look at your exposure, and you would probably have to put some resources into also growing the consumption. So not because there's not a set market, if there's potential, because we do consume a lot of meat. So can you put some resources into growing the consumption of rabbit meat? And again, the ministry and the government has looked at various things that have looked to drive the consumption, because again, we do see we have a competitive advantage in doing it. And one of the things that we've been working on is working with our egg farmers in relation to drive the consumption of eggs, because we've done really good at producing eggs, but it's still, in terms of the consumption numbers, when the hotel industry falls out, it takes a significant dive. We have one of our lowest egg consumption rates across the Caribbean. So that is good. I will tell you some other things that I think are good. Livestock and goat meat, we do import a significant amount of goat meat still. And we're talking in the millions of US dollars. I think at last check, we were about 12 million US dollars in relation to sheep, goat meat that we import. So there is an opportunity there, especially if you can get it to a semi-intensive level in relation to goat farming. And again, there is now a small ruminant association that you can reach out to. You can reach out to Ebony Park, you can reach out to Case, can reach out to RADA, and also the Dairy Industry Board that can provide you with some know-how if you're going into that area. Cattle does require a lot of space. So goat is a lot easier if you have less income to start with, but we do import a significant amount of beef. But one of the things we have to look at is whether we're really well positioned in terms of our land space to competitively compete in our beef industry. But there are other things. We do have a lot of natural herbs and spices that are among the best in the world. I would say to people, if you're looking something to go into, turmeric is a good area. We do see significant demand for turmeric, significant demand for ginger. If you're looking at ginger, you have to be clear in relation to, we do have a disease that affects ginger production. Again, you can contact JACRA. That's our commodities board. They have done research in all of these areas. They can give you the cost of production, how much you're going to need if you start with an acre, half an acre, quarter acre. You can look at that and you can get some information. So you can contact JACRA, you can contact our Dairy Industry Board if you're looking at livestock, JACRA if you're looking at our spices and commodities. But there are most of the things, I close on this, John, most of our things we're still not able to produce, especially to satisfy international demand. Even during COVID, our yam exports continued apace. During COVID, we saw new markets for our milk. In Trinidad, we saw spur tree spices accessing markets in Costa Rica. We saw our exporting pineapples to Cayman for the first time. So the global demand for fresh produce and agro-processed items from Jamaica is tremendous. What I would say to people, do the research work, contact RADA, AIC, JACRA, get the information before you start. Don't just rush in, and don't just look and see what your neighbor doing and try it, right? Because sometimes when all the tomatoes come now, we have a different problem.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. All right, gentlemen, we have...
George, if you would just allow me to make a suggestion to Floyd.
Yes, Senator.
I've been listening to him. There seems to be a tremendous amount of information, but he's saying contact JACRA, contact various agencies. Perhaps, he could use some digital portal that there could be just one place, one central place.
Yes.
Where all this information could be accessed. Because I didn't even know of some of what he's talking about. And my family has deep roots in agriculture. So
and we're hoping you will get back in it, especially.
No, I will.
I will. Funds that you have now to invest.
Well,
Proven will look into proven agriculture.
Gentlemen,
very good point. Very good point.
The point,
everybody.
The point from Senator Bunting is good. About a one portal where you can access all the information.
People, George, most of the information you can contact. If you're talking online, you can find through the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, our website. So you can just type MOA or Ministry of Agriculture Jamaica, and it will feed you to the other links. But I take the point in terms of pulling everything together, especially around the cost of production and the investment opportunities. I think that's a great point that I follow up on.
Gentlemen, it's 10 minutes to 5. I want to finish in 8 minutes so we have time to say goodbye. All right. So we're going to have to be very tight on the time. And the last thing is, it's just a point. I want a contribution from everyone on this last question in the 8 minutes that we have to talk that's left. All right. So it's simply this. You've left school, and by school, I'm interpreting this question to be talking about, let's say tertiary then. So you've done primary, secondary, tertiary, you've left school, or even up to secondary then. You've left school, and the question is, should I put my energies into looking for a 9 to 5, or should I put my energies into looking to do something by myself with a group of colleagues, friends, family, get into a business? What do I do? It's a question that people have been asking since I graduated from high school in '99, and it was a question that the generation before me asked themselves at that point, and it's still a question people ask. So I'm putting it to you all. Please keep the answers tight. Let me start with you, Alfred. What say you on that?
Yes, George. There are 10 top investment that you can do. Real estate, stocks and securities, have your savings account and it goes 1% or 2%. Invest in CDs, which are not too popular in Jamaica again. You can go into private equity. You can borrow money from your colleagues to invest. And you can go into a business with a partner. All right? Now, you have to be, as I said earlier, you have to be very careful how you approach it. But if you approach it and do the work, do the due diligence, it is something that you can accomplish. I am a clear testimony of that, in that I work with multinational company, work with a large Jamaican company, and at the point I saw the opportunity, and I said to myself, I'm going to leap out. We bought Chlorodo brand from Colgate, and the rest is history. All right?
Yes.
And then when I started the business, people were saying to me, why didn't you not start that before? But it's going to be a time when you are going to see the right opportunity, and you're going to move at the right opportunity.
Yes.
But don't be too hasty for it.
Thank you. That Paul, your contribution to that point. 9 to 5 or seek a business.
Alfred covered it nicely, so I'm going to say it's all about timing. And like, if I can use my 1 minute to just answer a question from Millie Finley, and that one is kind of important. So I share Alfred's answer. It's about timing.
Yes, Paul. Yeah, man. Go ahead, man. No problem.
So Millie asked the question, which is quite common for Jamaicans. And as a lady, she says, start earning at 19, had children at 25, spent all her earnings schooling her children. Now at 50, tired of 9 to 5, what does she do? And at 50, you have a limited time for retirement. So you have to think about preserving what you have now and try to see if you can start to assess what you need to do in retirement. Your kids may help you, but at the end of the day, you need to think about this. In 15 years, you retire, right? At 65. So assess what is your retirement income is going to be. Children are grown and finished with school. You spend all the money. Now you get for the next 15 years to keep all that money you're spending on them. Do you want to, one, invest in stocks and try to be conservative, grow, or you want to take a mortgage, pay it off in 15 years? That will give you 3 sources of income. 1, rental income once you retire. 2, your pension income. And if you bought some stocks along the way in the next 15 years before you retire, you also have investment income. So I wanted to answer that one for her. And the last one I'll answer is the one with the retail question about what to do in retail. And that one came from, I forget the name of the person, but it's asking about what to do about retail, because we're talking about agriculture. Retail is a matter of margins, sourcing markets, and demand. And so if you're getting into retail, you can always start with discretionary income. You find something that somebody's going to buy from you. You can buy from Alfred's company and sell in the country because he doesn't want to drive trucks out there to go sell in Seaford Town or Dundee. You buy, you sell. It's all about margins. So if you can buy and sell, then you can also grow. Then you can grow a retail business. It can become a viable retail business. The other thing about retail, and I'll end here, is retail is about margins or volume or a combination of both. So if you're going into retail business, not because somebody doing it, that you are going to go in there. Does it make sense? Is the time right? So I'll end there. Hopefully I've added some value to the discussion.
Yeah, George,
a lot of value has been added. Yes.
Let me say, for the vast majority of people, it's better to start with a job, with a 9 to 5. It gives you an opportunity to gain experience, to understand to get the script, to understand what is expected in the work world. It also allows you to truly understand a sector or different sectors that you may have an interest in, and you establish the relationships that you will need to go out on your own. After 3 years or so, then I think you can start looking out, moving. But I would say for the vast majority of people, it's better you start with a 9 to 5.
Thank you very much. LG Ramakhan, running heavy. I want to hear from you, and then the minister in the time we have. Go, your turn.
Right. Okay. So the response really will be in full sum in my upcoming book called 4 Deep Insights Investors Keep Close. And I'll just share one of them in this brief time. So the first thing is that it's best to make all your mistakes at a big company, because they have the capital to be able to absorb it, and you learn, you develop relationships, as Senator Bunting said, so that when you're now starting your little business, you have learned from those mistakes so that you can nail it and scale it. So that's the first thing. The second point that's very important is that there's a difference between time does not equal money. That's a big game changer that you need to understand. Time does not equal money. You don't know how much, you always know how much money you have left, but you don't know how much time you have left. So there's a difference between time and timing. All right, listen to this real quickly. So time does not equal money, but rather timing equals financing. Did you hear what I said? Time does not equal money, timing equals financing, which therefore means good timing equals good financing. Good timing of an idea gives good financing of an idea. Good timing of a need will bring you good financing of that need. Good timing of a vision will bring you good financing of that vision. And good timing of a plan will give you good financing of that plan. So yes, when time turns to money, it's still enslavement. And you want to get out of that enslavement. When timing turns to financing, it is enablement. And that's the time to start your job. Just to start.
Excellent. Excellent. Minister, the last word is yours.
Yeah, so I think everybody has covered in terms of the question. Clearly, it depends on your circumstance. Clearly, if you're going to start a business, you have to think about the capital that you have, and it's really important to get experience. But you have to make a plan, and I'll say that agriculture, it's come time and time again. You have to have a plan, and I liked what Sir Ramakhan gave us in terms of the pen. I think that applies to everything, including agriculture and fisheries. So in my final word, I want to say to people, it's a really good time if you're looking at creating wealth to look back at the agriculture space. And that includes our fisheries space. We haven't spoken about the tremendous demand for our fisheries and the need for us to go further out. You know, we have real strong export markets in lobster and conch, and we're now going to be going into sea cucumber. There are tremendous opportunities out there, but everything comes back down to the plan. Everything's come back down to the approach that you take, to your network, your enthusiasm. And I think that's very, very important. We have a lot more to do. We've been looking at the figures. Just to let you know, our hotel industry demands about $39 billion in agricultural produce, and we fulfill about 20% of that. That's 39 billion. So again, the market is there. We have to take a strategic business-based approach. So let me just say, I hope we've been able to provide some practical support. I will take on the suggestion, but I say to everybody, reach out to the ministry. You can reach out to me directly and we can continue the conversation. But as I close, George, you know that we're doing this from home, and my son demanded to say hi. So Nathaniel, this is your chance to say hi. He said, I took his time today. Look in the camera. He's in his Leicester shirt. Say hello.
Hello.
The last thing I'll say is in relation to generational wealth, two things that I wish I had known earlier that he now knows is I bought stocks. I used to think you had to be rich to buy stocks. You don't have to. My first stock was the Jamaica Stock Exchange, and boy, it has turned out very, very well. That is one. And two, think about generational wealth. One of the things that we're doing, George, we now have health and life insurance for farmers and our fishers, because we want them to recognize that the planning has to include planning for your children, right? So Nathaniel, are you going to be a farmer?
No.
What are you going to be?
Footballer.
He wants to be a footballer, you know, he's at that stage of life. So thank you, everybody. This has been really good. Say bye-bye.
Excellent. The Jamaican Riyad Mahrez is in development. Paul Elliott, Deputy CEO of VMBS, thank you very much. Alfred Thomas, Managing Director, Pioneer Manufacturing, thank you very much. Elliott George Ramakhan, Cyber Economist and Consultant, Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, Floyd Green, and Leader of Opposition Business in the Senate, Proven Investments, Peter Bunting. Thank you all, gentlemen. We robbed you of your family time, but it was for a good cause. Thank you very much. All the best to you.
Thank you.
As we sign off, also want to say thanks to those who watched us on PBC Jamaica. Thanks to those who also watch us on Scene Online, Scene TV Online on YouTube. And thanks to the Andrews Memorial SDA Church Men's Ministry for giving us this platform. All the best to you. I'm out.
This program is brought to you with kind courtesy of Pioneer Manufacturing Distribution Company Limited, manufacturers of Chlorodo bleach.